Hi there, and welcome to the Allume Performance Appraisal Process training. I'm here today to talk to you about our whole performance appraisal process and how it is designed to support you in your ongoing success. So let's see if I can get the slide to change. Thank you. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a brief introduction, the context of how this program fits into the larger employee success program at Allume. We're going to talk about the different time points when a performance appraisal occurs and what the actual process will be when you have a performance appraisal, what the meeting agenda looks like, and then we'll also do a separate section on goals. So the introduction I want to talk to you about here is that the purpose of the performance evaluation process is to support you in having a successful experience with Allume. It is intended to make you feel like you know what's expected of you and that the hurdles to meeting those expectations are minimal. And we're wanting very much to make this be a dialogue for you that is nurturing and filled with possibility and opportunity. It's a way for us to communicate with each other. It should be a way for us to always be able to improve together as an organization and you individually as an employee. So we'll talk about later on the specific instructions on how to do each of the forms. And so for most people, for most of our staff, especially direct care, there's one form that you fill out or one form that gets filled out and that you go through together. And for office personnel and for leadership team, there's more forms that are filled out. And so we will talk more about those in later trainings. We'll also talk about how to prepare in later trainings, the role of the evaluator and the one who's being evaluated as well. Today we're just going to talk about what is the process, and so you know what it is. So we believe it's important to ensure quality communication with our employees. And we believe that when that happens, that we together see these wonderful benefits. We talk about skills, education, and excellence. So you feel like you know how to take care of a medically fragile patient, for example. You have the right skills, and that over time you grow into a state of excellence. And it's important to remember that you can't be excellent at something that you're doing for the first time. You probably can't be excellent for something you're doing for the first 3 to 6 months. Excellence, they say, takes 10,000 hours to really arrive, and it's not just 10,000 hours of doing something. It's 10,000 hours of consistent commitment to being great. So we want to support you in being great at what you do. And the nice thing about excellence is that when you are doing something with excellence, it actually feels good to you. It actually is rewarding and fulfilling, uplifting when you feel like you're doing something that's with real excellence. It's also important for you to have a sense as you're working with Allume. A lot of people really are interested in career development and career planning to understand where your role fits in the larger organization, and if you would like to have more opportunities, what those opportunities are and how to raise your hand and be involved in those opportunities. We want to have conversations about what the expectations are and what are the goals for an employee. What does success look like? What are the things that compliance requires of us? And these are things that Allume has no control over, right? Compliance is set by the government, usually the federal government on the Medicare level or the Department of Public Health, DPH, on the state level. We want you to be aware of what those bits are. It's also important for team coordination. None of us work in a bubble. We're all working together with a larger team, and patients and families are at the heart of what we're trying to support and serve. So coordination is also part of what we are trying to affect. Mentorship. We want you to feel mentored, supported, and leadership development. So it's one thing to be skillful. It's another thing to be a leader. And at Allume, I like to invite everyone to see themselves as a leader. And number one, the way that you are, the way you operate, how you do things, the energy in which you bring your action, it sets the tone for what others will recommend and see out of you. So we're all leading all the time by the way we act and what we do. The question is how are we leading? Are we leading towards a direction of mediocrity or a direction of remarkability? I hope it's the latter. So our performance appraisal program is part of an overall employee training and engagement program, our employee success program, and it includes other elements, including mentoring and supervision. Of course, the performance appraisal program is part of that. We also are focused on developing the weekly CARA check-ins with a mentor or supervisor. It's also part of the initial orientation and training program and our monthly in-services. These are all part of helping you be successful. So here's what our performance appraisal program really looks like. First, you have the orientation and competency evaluation that happens at the very beginning of when you start working with Allume. And part of that is the one-on-one training you do with a supervisor. It's also the shadowing and mentoring that you might do in this first piece. And the competency evaluation includes when you start to level. Are you at level 1, 2, or 3? Then we sort of move you into the 90-day success program where you're going to be working more closely, right, over the first 90 days with your mentor or supervisor and getting your feet wet, getting to know the scheduler, getting to know the family, getting to know the Allume system, hearing back from quality assurance, finding out how you're doing in terms of documentation. Working with your team to be able to really get settled in working with a family. Then there's a moment of the 3-month evaluation that comes, and then the 6-month evaluation, the 12-month evaluation, and then we have the annual and biannual that goes on and on and on. So 3-month evaluation and goal setting. So 3 months after you've started, it's a perfect time to check in and make sure that you have the appropriate setting of where you are in your goals. And really the expectations for you in the first 3 months or 90 days of being in the field is that first that you're competent in performing your job, whatever your job is in the organization, whether you're a direct care provider or you're a scheduler or you are a financial manager, that you are in the first three months. The idea is to get you to a place of competence. You want to be on time with the completion of your job functions. You want to have a established relationship with your supervisor and mentor. And if this is not the responsibility of your supervisor and mentor alone, it is your responsibility to make sure that the time is set aside for you. We like to say that we carry our own bags in this organization. So what that means is it's like when you go on a trip, it's the same thing in my family. It doesn't matter if you're 3 years old or 80 years old, you're carrying your own bags. And so you need to be responsible for yourself. And if part of the responsibility for you and the expectation is to make sure you have a connection with your mentor or your supervisor each week when you first get started, then it's your responsibility to do that. It's not the responsibility of your mentor to do that. It's your responsibility to make sure those connections happen. We need to make sure your attendance is good. And right from the start, this is going to help us see the level of integrity that you have, the ability for you to be accountable, the ability for you to show up and do your job and be remarkable to our patients and families. So attendance is a really big part of how we get to know you. And we understand that sometimes things work out that you can't be where you need to be, and people get sick and accidents happen and so on and so forth. But in general, in your first 3 months of a job, it's a good idea to put your absolute best foot forward on attendance. And that's in any organization, but it is expressed here that it's important. It's really important. Documentation, your clinical documentation, and if you are, if you're in the office and you have other roles and responsibilities that are due at a particular date, it's the same rule here. within 24 hours. It needs to be done on the date that it's due. And when it's clinical documentation, our policies require us to have all documentation done within 24 hours. This is important. Weekly care check-ins as part of that relationship with your mentor or supervisor, making sure that that's happening. Awareness of one's strengths and weaknesses. So we want you to be aware. As I said before, you're looking to become excellent in your proficiencies. You're not only being excellent in your clinical, but your communication, your ability to be a team player, all of these pieces. And so you need to be aware of your strengths and weaknesses. As the leadership team, we're all at Allume very aware of what our strengths and weaknesses are. There are some things that I do well and that I'm talented to do, and other things that are my weaknesses that I have to be aware of. And to have that awareness helps you, because then you can guide your career and you can get help and put yourself in places where you can really exemplify your strengths, and then also shore up your weaknesses where needed, or have others help you with your weaknesses. 6 months later, we would like to see that at the 6-month point of your career with us is when you sit down and you do your first real evaluation, and you say, okay, here's how we're doing, and we measure how things are going. So at the 6-month mark, our hope is that every employee has achieved the following. Now you're at a place of very good performance. Before you were competent. Now you need to be at a place in 6 months of very good performance of job functions. So an example of that would be that maybe in the first 3 months, you are getting a lot of quality assurance feedback from your supervisors in the office. And that's normal and expected. But by the time you're at 6 months, it's expected that sort of worked itself out, and here and there might be an identification of some kind of quality assurance issue that is being sent back for you to correct. But it should be minimal by 6 months. It should be that you've worked out the kinks, you know how to do what you need to do, and if there are issues that you really need more help and training, that in that period of time, up to 6 months, that you will have been self-serving in the sense of taking care of yourself to get some training. The door is always open for you to come in and get training in the office. We want on-time completion of job functions at the 6-month point with absolutely no exceptions. You need to be an active participant in the relationship you have with your mentor. We want to know that your supervisor or mentor after 6 months should know you well. There should be a relationship where every time there is a problem, or every time there's a change in condition, or every time there's a change in doctor's orders, every time something comes up, that the supervisor knows and trusts that you out in the field, if that is your role, has communicated. And so this is an important part of the 6-month function, is to have already gotten into place that relationship between you and your mentor supervisor, and it is on you to make those connections. And sometimes perhaps in other locations, other environments, maybe it's been sort of assumed that the supervisors don't want to hear from you. Let me make it very clear that we do. We want to know what's happening. We want a relationship with you, and we want to support you. Participation in monthly earned services is happening. No reminders necessary that you're getting it done and it's done. Whenever there's a situation where we have to remind you to do something, whether it's remind you to get your notes completed, or remind you to do your weekly care check-ins, or remind you to do your in-services. Any reminding is actually spending somebody else's time to do that, and that is not efficient. It's not the best of all of us, right? So it's not being a good team player. Those are examples of what it means in the organization to be a team player. If you need others to remind you, then those are acts of not completing your expectations and not being a good team player. So we ask you to please get your in-services done on time. Attendance, again, really important. It's strong. Rarely are there call outs. You're always on time. You're always stay through to the full shift. Your documentation is complete within 24 hours. Your documentation quality should be consistent and competent. And your weekly care check-ins with your supervisor and mentor are definitely happening. You're picking up the phone. You're making an act, picking up the phone and calling your supervisor on a weekly basis. Continuous improvement of quality and skill. You're seeing yourself grow, and you know where you're growing, and that your supervisor knows where you're growing. The 12-month time frame is where we expect you to be at a state of excellence in your job function. Within 12 months, you should be really masterful. And even to me at that point, it's the type of thing where you should be able to demonstrate or teach someone else. You should be at that leadership level, that mentorship level. On-time completion of job functions 100% of the time. Relationship with your supervisor and mentor is going well. It's frequent. It's an appropriate communication. There's trust that's built between each other because you've had enough required weekly communication that now you feel comfortable to contact them whenever is necessary or is appropriate. You're absolutely participating in monthly in-services. Your attendance is strong. Your documentation is excellent. It's to the point where others would be looking at your documentation as an example of what excellent documentation is. It's following the plan of care. It's making sure that the MARs and TARs are accurate every single time. It's showing and demonstrating in the narrative alignment with whatever you're seeing. Continuous improvement, ongoing. We want to continue to see where you're looking to develop more excellence. You're actively engaging in our community. And there's different ways to engage in the Allume community. Simple as going on to the Facebook page and participating there. It could be coming to our events, our networking events. Could be, coming and joining us for potluck or whatever we have going on in the office, a holiday party, also participating in innovation roundtables, getting involved in any way. We hope that within 12 months' time, that becomes part of your ritual, that you're engaged and connected with us in a way that is authentic for you, and that allows us to really develop a relationship with you. And last here is two things here. Feels great about being part of the Allume team. We want you to take pride in being a part of our team. We want you to feel like the level of care and service that you deliver is different. We also want to be able to feel like we can provide remarkable care for you. And that's one of the most important reasons why having you engage with us, having you check in with your mentor on a weekly basis, having it be your responsibility, as well as checking in and connecting with the community on Facebook or in any of our events where you can. Responding to the trainings, right? Sending an email in about questions that you have. Participating in book club, all these things, help to make sure you're part of the team. You're feeling connected. We hope that by 12 months from now that you're demonstrating leadership in direct and indirect ways. We believe that if you're participating in those kinds of ways, that you're really getting the opportunity to be part of the culture and the community, and you're reaping the most benefits of being part of this team. So then ongoing, we just continue to develop, right? And we look for opportunities to develop more excellence. We want to make sure the basics of attendance, relationship building, on-time completion of job functions are continuously growing. We're also looking for ways to help develop your career. And so we have opportunities for our team, and we'll be talking about that more in another segment, but our career development path is open for you. And so there are ways for you to become a mentor. There are ways for you to participate in potential tuition reimbursement. There are ways for you to become a full-time employee with benefits, more benefits than you currently have. There are ways for you to think about a future, like case management potentially, or supervision potentially. We also have opportunities that occur in the office. At some point, you might want to become more involved in the administrative side of things, quality assurance, interviewing, recruiting, medical records, marketing. There's all different kinds of ways that you could become more and more involved in what happens here at Allume. All right, and we do this on not just an annual but a biannual basis. So every 6 months we check in with you. So you set 1-year goals, and every 6 months. So if you have your anniversary, let's say in January, then 6 months later in July, we'll meet and talk about how you're doing and how you're doing on your goals for the year at that 6-month mark. We might need to make some adjustments if things are going in one direction or another. We make adjustments that 6 months time, and then we continue on again to the next 6 months, which would be your next year. And this is a way for us to continuously help you be in connection with us. So the process is that there are forms that are completed, and depending on your role, there's different forms. For our direct care staff, the forms are completed by your mentor or supervisor, and then there is a time that's established to meet in person. The mentor and supervisor prepares in advance and collects data from HR and quality assurance to know how all the different aspects of the employee, the person who's going to be evaluated, and then there's a period where you sit down together and you receive coaching on what's been put together by your supervisor or mentor. And this is a meaningful coaching discussion about where you are in your role, where you can develop and set some new goals, or if it's the case of a 6-month evaluation, to evaluate how you're doing on the yearly goals and then adjust them accordingly. And at the end, you and your supervisor sign it, and those forms get put into your employee record. So when you get together, what happens? So the evaluation meeting or coaching session that you have with your supervisor or mentor, you first get together, you welcome, and you're acknowledged for the good things that you're doing. They review the list of expectations of where you should be in your journey. You then review the last completed goal setting worksheet, and when you do that, it's important to see where you were and where you're headed. Then we do an evaluation of job skills. We talk about your strengths and weaknesses, or strengths and opportunities, and we complete the goal setting aspect of your performance evaluation. Then you and your mentor sign it and date all documents. And so that's how it works. If you have any questions, I hope you'll reach out to either me. I'm always happy to talk about performance appraisals, or you can also reach out to anyone in human resources, so Taylor or Christine, and they can help you with navigating this journey and getting the most out of it. This is not intended at all to be punitive or critical. This is a way for us to have a good working relationship together, and any feedback from you is always greatly appreciated. All right, thanks, and have a wonderful day. Oh, don't forget, go make the world a better place.